Hi, I'm Sebastian Winters, and this is PS on the BS. Religious nationalism never lasts. It was never sustainable. It never sustains itself, but it also never fades quietly. Every single time it's risen to power through the history of mankind, it's brought war, destruction, and the deaths of millions before being violently rejected. Europe learned this the hard way, fighting centuries of religious wars before prying faith away from the machinery of state. The Middle East and South Asia learned it in blood from the collapse of the Ottoman Caliphate to the cataclysm of India's partition. Fascist states that fused religion with nationalism, Nazi Germany, Franco's Spain, Mussolini's Italy, were either bombed into the ground or forced to reform under immense pressure. The pattern is absolute. Religious nationalism always collapses, but not before dragging nations through war. And now it's America's turn. Christian nationalism is not coming. It is here. And if history is any guide, it will not leave without a fight. There has never been a case in human history where religious nationalism came to power and peacefully stepped back. Never. It always follows the same trajectory. A political movement fuses religion with national identity, using it to seize control. Dissenters are silenced, marginalized, or killed. The state enforces religious conformity through violence and law. Society fractures into war, genocide, or civil strife. Millions die before the theocracy is collapsed or overthrown. It happened in Europe's wars of religion with 8 million dead. It happened in England's Puritan rule, hundreds of thousands dead. It happened in the partition of India, 2 million dead. It happened in Nazi Germany and fascist Spain, 85 million dead in World War II. It has happened every time religious nationalism has been taken to its logical extreme. And now it's happening in the United States. In the 16th century, France tore itself apart in a series of brutal conflicts between Catholics and Protestants, Huguenots. Entire towns were razed, and the infamous St. Bartholomew's Day massacre saw thousands slaughtered in the streets. It ended only after the French monarchy realized the country would cease to exist if the killing continued. The Edict of Nantes in 1598 granted religious toleration, but by then 3 million people were already dead. A war over whether Catholicism or Protestantism would define national identity devastated Germany, depopulated entire regions, and left cities in ruins. By the time the Peace of Westphalia was signed, ending the war, nearly a third of the German population was dead. The continent learned a brutal lesson. Religious nationalism only ends in mass graves. England tried it. Oliver Cromwell's Puritans overthrew the monarchy and imposed a fanatical religious rule in the 1650s. They banned everything from Christmas to theater. They executed dissenters. They weaponized religion to police daily life. And yet, how long did it last? A decade. That's it. By 1660, the monarchy was restored. By 1688, the Glorious Revolution permanently enshrined in the idea that England would never again be ruled by religious absolutists. But even here, it was not peaceful. The English Civil War killed 200,000 people, more than 4% of the population. In 1947, religious nationalism nearly tore India apart as independence from Britain approached. The question of national identity turned into a crisis. Would India be a secular, pluralistic democracy, or would it be carved up by religious lines? The answer came in blood. Partition of India in 1947, one of the largest and deadliest forced migrations in history. Up to 2 million people were killed. 14 million were displaced. Hindu and Muslim nationalists fueled a frenzy of violence that still scars the region today. The secular rejection in India under Nehru rejected Hindu nationalism and built a secular state, but it came at the cost of millions of lives. Religious nationalism never fades quietly. It demands blood. Nazi Germany and Catholic fascists in the 20th century, 85 million people dead. Fascism thrives on religious nationalism. Nazi Germany weaponized Christian identity, casting itself as a defender of Western Christendom against Jewish and Bolshevik threats. Catholic nationalist movements in Spain and Italy did the same, and yet every single one of those regimes fell, but not without war. World War II, from 1939 to 1945, 85 million people dead. Nazi Germany destroyed. Italy's fascist government collapsed. Franco's Spain or clung to power, but it only isolated itself from the world. Even the Vatican distanced itself from fascism by the end. Again, religious nationalism rose, and again, it was only through total war that it was defeated. If history is any guide, we know what happens next. Religious nationalism never fades peacefully. It only ends when enough blood has been spilled. Phase 1, the theocratic rule is established. Courts weaken constitutional protections against religious overreach. The government enacts policies that favor Christianity over other faiths. The state takes control of education to rewrite history and suppresses the dissenting views. Phase 2, the targeting of enemies begins. Dissenters are labeled traitors or enemies of the state. Political violence increases. January 6th was just a preview. Laws will be used to purge the opposition. Phase 3, war, collapse, and reckoning. Religious nationalism does not last. It falls only after immense bloodshed. Scenario 1 is a civil war, prolonged insurgency with religious extremists fighting to suppress secular and non-Christian opposition. Scenario 2, fascist rule followed by collapse, Christian nationalist dictatorship temporarily, but such regimes do not last. Scenario 3, mass exile and resistance as rights are stripped away. Expect waves of Americans to flee. And in the end, Christian nationalism will fall. It always does. This is the final warning, though. This will not end peacefully. There is no version of this where Christian nationalism simply fades away. No version where it packs up and accepts that America is a democracy. No version where this ends without mass conflict. And no version where we, the people, give up. They will not stop until they're forced to stop. And when they are, the nation will look back just as Europe did after the wars of religion, just as Spain did after Franco, just as the U.S. did after the Civil War, just as the whole world did after Nazi Germany, and say, never again. But history tells us something else, too. After this time, and yes, it's almost certainly already too late to stop what's coming. It will get worse. It will get horrific. We will be known the world over for generations as the same object lesson our fathers assigned to the Nazis. But like the Third Reich, this time ahead will also end with religious nationalism pushed back into the foul hole it's crawled out of. And then, no matter what, someday, because humans are profoundly stupid, it will happen all again. Maybe not in our lifetime, maybe not in our children's, but religious nationalism is a force that will never truly die. It simply waits for the next moment of fear, the next moment of opportunity, the next moment of weakness, the next generation willing to claim divine right over an entire nation. And then the cycle will begin again.